Afternoon tomorrow. So how about if can I send it back to Mike Seidel and let me digest this 11 o'clock advisory, and then I'll have it for you here at the top of the hour. Mike Seidel back in Fort Pierce. You should be getting more from this outer band here. Outer eye wall fragment kind of coming apart up your way, but I expect you'll be getting more any minute here. Back to you.
Yeah, we should. Certainly, the general trend has been increased wind and increased rainfall. By the way, we gusted to 47 miles an hour about 10 minutes ago at the Fort Pierce Airport. That's our peak gust so far. West Palm Beach has gusted to 49 miles an hour officially. Airport's inland, but Ron Blum can certainly report that they've had winds gusting over 60 right down there on the beach. And that's one of the reasons you pulled back earlier this evening, you and Sam.
Not getting all of that, Mike, but are you getting more of those bands up there?
Well, we're waiting for the band to really come in here. If you look at the radar right now, a lot of red and orange out there. And as Brian mentioned, that outer eye wall could produce gusts in excess of 100 miles an hour. And that's going to be a lot more power goes out here in the Sunshine State. Last check, 66,000 customers. But boy, the wind, certainly the average wind now is running at about 20 to 25 miles an hour. And we're getting more frequent, stronger gusts. A sign that Matthew is closer and that those bands are going to rotate in. And those squalls where you have the strongest winds and the heaviest rainfall. Now, the other thing about keeping the center off the coast is when you bring a hurricane or a tropical storm on shore, you have what we call the right front quadrant, and that's the area more susceptible for tornadoes to develop. Now, granted, with hurricanes and tropical storms, we don't get the big EF3s, 4s, and 5s, maybe an EF3 every now and then. They tend to be weaker tornadoes, but tornadoes nonetheless. So if we can keep the center off the coast, that means the right front quadrant stays off the coast, and that keeps our tornado threat down. We've got the new advisory, and Brian Norcross is now digested, and he's got more insight on what the Hurricane Center is saying, what the hurricane hunters have found with that lower pressure.
Well, the hurricane hunters have found this double eye wall. The National Hurricane Center is confirming it to do that. All right, Mike Seidel is in Fort Pierce. The center of this is just east-southeast of you, and it looks like this band is increasing. I see the rain increasing there. He's leaning into it. All right, Mike Seidel, take it away.
Yeah, I don't, 170 pounds maybe on a good day. I've got the stop sign here, Brian, just in case. Brian, I want to ask you, you talked about the Space Coast, Melbourne, and distinctly more vulnerable because it sticks out. Certainly not as far as the Outer Banks, but that's why that puts them certainly more in the potential way of that little inner eye wall where we have the strongest winds.
So, Mike, ask me your question again. I'm sorry, we were looking at the discussion there a second. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Now, I was going to mention, that you go up to the Cape Canaveral area and it juts out. It's certainly not like North Carolina, but it could potentially catch that outer eye wall. And the new GOES satellite is up there. Fortunately, it's not on the launch pad, and it's in a building built for up to Category 4 hurricanes. So that brand new weather satellite is set to go up. In fact, we're going to have live coverage there early next month with Jim Cantori, and Jen Carfagno is safely ensconced in a building up there at the Cape right now.
Yeah, we were worried about that, actually, because we knew it was getting ready to launch, and we were afraid this hurricane and that were going to join. Mike, this whole idea of this double eye wall, we've been talking about it here, and we really don't know what exactly is happening here, because normally what happens is, as you know, this outer eye wall forms, takes over, chokes off the inner eye wall dies off, and then the outer eye wall becomes stronger and contracts back in, and the storm gets stronger. Normally, that's what happens. So far, that has not happened here. It still has some time for that to happen, but it doesn't show any signs of it, and I can see you getting pounded by this kind of fragmented band that's just coming in there now. Back to you.
Yeah, certainly not your typical eye wall replacement cycle that we often see very vividly with those, those howling typhoons out there in the Western Pacific. Brian Norcross, appreciate the update there, and we'll keep checking back with Brian. We've got the new, obviously, new update in. The new cone is in, And I guess if there's any glimmer of hope, the center right now will stay primarily off the coast. Power outages now, 67,000 customers here in the state of Florida. That number will go up. And this is video just in from the Palm Beach area. That's about an hour and a half or so south of here, and you can see arcing and flashes, power flashes, and in fact, storm chaser Doug Kiesling up at Satellite Beach on the Space Coast there around the Cocoa Beach, Melbourne area. He's been seeing that through the evening, and he's farther away from the storm, but then again, he is out on the beach, and we're about 4 or 5 miles inland here where we are. We're just on the other side of Interstate 95, and I've been keeping an eye on the roadway behind me, and boy, there's nobody out there tonight, and that is a good thing. When I drove up late this morning from Fort Lauderdale, very few cars, and the cars that were coming northbound were probably doing maybe a little bit more than the speed limit, and they went right by the state trooper, and he didn't stop them. I guess he was happy to let them go and get out of harm's way. Boy, the rain is really picking up here in Fort Pierce. We've got a Category 4 storm still. Matthew, a hurricane, 130-mile-an-hour winds. Chris Warren, you've seen the new cone. It certainly doesn't keep Charleston out of the woods. In fact, the Hurricane Center hoisted the hurricane warnings there at 5 p.m. They took that hurricane warning just north of Charleston. Chris?
Yeah, still hoping for more, Mike.
Mike, let's jump back up to Fort Pierce. Are you seeing the wind shift that we're seeing?
No, we're not getting a wind shift. We're just getting a wind increase. And this is kind of what we've seen around the hotels, these palm fronds getting blown down. That's about the worst of it. The power is still on here in Fort Pierce. We'll put that one down, and we'll make sure we put it down downwind from the on-camera meteorologist. Looking down the street, we still got the wind blowing and the lights up there. It's not raining as hard as it was earlier, but, you know, it's raining at a pretty good clip there. And on the radar, you can see the banding feature. And again, we've been watching the eye wall replacement cycle, but it's not your typical one. And we'll keep watching that. Right now, though, the center is staying safely off the coast, the worst of the storm. Hurricane Matthew, though, still a dangerous storm heading towards the Carolinas and Georgia.